Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're heading back to 1632 London to explore Richard Brome's comedy, The Northern Lass.
Sounds fun.
It is. Think scheming widows.
Oh, I love those.
Gentlemen obsessed with status, and a young woman named Constance who shows up speaking this really charming northern dialect.
Oh, wow.
There are secret contracts, mistaken identities, even a scene with, like, a mock childbirth. It's a wild ride. And to help us understand not just the plot, but the historical context and the humor, we have our expert.
Well, The Northern Lass, it's not just about the laughs. Brome is using this play to, really critique 17th century London society.
Okay.
He pokes fun at the class system, at love and marriage, even at the power dynamics between men and women.
Right.
And the play itself is our primary source, so we get to see all the drama firsthand.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Let's start with one of those social climbers Brome loves to satirize. Sir Philip Luckless. What's his story?
Oh, Sir Philip. He's fascinating because he really embodies the ambitions and the pitfalls of anyone who wants to climb that social ladder in 17th century London.
Okay.
He's driven by wealth and status. He's even willing to buy a knighthood just to impress a rich widow. Really shows you how far people would go to boost their social standing.
That rich widow being Mistress Fitchow, of course.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't strike me as someone who's easily impressed.
Exactly. Mistress Fitchow is not your typical damsel in distress. This is a wealthy widow who knows what she's worth and isn't afraid to play the game, to protect her interests and stay in control.
Which is important because being a widow back then wasn't exactly easy. What kind of pressures did widows face in 17th century London?
Well, their options were really limited. There was pressure to remarry quickly, and they could even lose control of their own money. So Mistress Fitchow's defiance, makes her a much more interesting character.
Yeah, she's a force to be reckoned with. Now let's talk about Constance, the northern lass herself. She arrives in London, bound by this secret contract, a broken promise of marriage to Sir Philip. These contracts seem pretty serious.
Oh, they were no joke. Contracts carried immense weight back then. They could determine your entire future.
Right.
Breaking them had real legal consequences. So Constance's situation, it really shows how vulnerable young women were. Their fate could be decided by these agreements.
Makes you glad we don't have those kinds of contracts anymore.
Yeah.
What I loved about Constance is how she speaks, this charming northern dialect.
Yeah.
It's like a breath of fresh air compared to everyone else in London.
Yeah.
What was Brome going for there?
Well, you have to remember that regional differences were huge back then. Your dialect could immediately mark you as an outsider.
Oh, okay.
So giving Constance this distinct way of speaking, Brome, he achieves a couple of things.
Okay.
First, it's funny. It pokes fun at her country ways. But it also makes her more likable to the audience. She stands out from all those scheming Londoners.
And speaking of scheming, we can't forget Master Tridewell, Sir Philip's relative. He's got his own plans for Constance.
Ah, Tridewell. He's a bit of a mystery. Is he actually in love with Constance, or is he just trying to take advantage, maybe get his hands on some of her fortune?
Good question.
Brome leaves it up to the audience to decide.
That adds another layer to the love triangle.
Yeah.
Speaking of love, Constance's Willow Song is a highlight for me. It's beautiful, but it's also so melancholic. Is there a deeper meaning there?
Absolutely. The willow tree had a lot of symbolism in 17th century literature and folklore. Wow. It was linked to sadness, lost love, unrequited affection. So when Constance sings that song, it's not just a broken heart, it's reflecting the limited choices women had in matters of the heart. Their happiness was often tied to societal expectations.
That adds a whole new dimension to her character.
Right.
But this play isn't all doom and gloom. Brome throws in some seriously chaotic scenes.
Oh.
We've got mistaken identities leading to, brawls. There's this ridiculous scene where a character thinks a doll is a baby, and another character, Squelch, being exposed as a total hypocrite. What's with all the chaos?
That's the genius of Brome's comedy.
Yeah.
He uses farce physical humor to highlight those deeper societal issues.
Okay.
Like the mistaken identities show how quick people are to judge based on appearances. And Squelch, his hypocrisy, it reviews how those in power don't always practice what they preach.
So he's making us laugh while also making us think.
Exactly. Social commentary disguised as entertainment.
Now, that poem tied to Constance's broken contract. I can't believe it mysteriously reappears.
This is where the play gets really interesting. That poem, it becomes a symbol of Sir Philip's broken promise, a constant reminder of his past actions. His conscience is literally haunting him.
Wow, and how does Sir Philip react to this blast from the past? Does it change him at all?
It does. Oh, it really does. His guilt starts to eat at him, and he starts to question his whole pursuit of Mistress Fitchow. He realizes that the life he's building, based on ambition, might not actually bring him happiness.
So maybe this superficial gentleman does have a heart after all.
Maybe he does. And meanwhile, Mistress Fitchow, she's not just sitting around waiting. She's got her own plans in motion, showing how strong and cunning she is.
Amazing to think that a play written almost 400 years ago can still be so relevant.
It is. It's because Brome understood human nature, that desire for love and happiness, and the struggle to navigate society's expectations. Those themes are timeless.
So we've got a love triangle, scheming relatives, hidden contracts, and a healthy dose of chaos. I'm hooked. But we've only just scratched the surface. What other surprises does Brome have for us?
Well, you'll have to wait for the next part of our deep dive to find out, but let me tell you, things are about to get a whole lot more complicated, a whole lot more hilarious, and even more thought-provoking. Stay tuned.
Okay, I'm ready for more.
That confrontation between Constance and Sir Philip during the Willow Mask, that really kicks things off. It's like a catalyst for everything that happens next.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What happens next?
So, Sir Philip, he's drowning in guilt, right? He wants to break things off with Mistress Fitchow and go after Constance. But Mistress Fitchow, she's not going to let him off so easily.
She's a tough one. What are her motivations in all of this? Is it just about money?
It's more than that. Remember, for a woman in her position, marriage isn't just about love. It's about security, her social standing. It's about control over her own life. Breaking off the engagement could really damage her reputation and leave her vulnerable.
So it's a power struggle just as much as a love triangle.
Exactly. And Brome, he's brilliant. He gives both Sir Philip and Mistress Fitchow agency. They're not just victims of circumstance. They're making choices that affect everything.
Speaking of choices, where does Walter Widgeon fit into all of this? He's been on this whole quest to find a wife.
Oh.
Any luck there?
Walter, he's a whole other story. His journey is like this hilarious subplot that runs parallel to the main love triangle. He's always getting into these ridiculous situations.
I love Walter.
It's like Brome is using him to show how absurd it is to chase after money and status without considering love.
He's like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
A funny one, though.
Exactly. And you see how societal pressure can push people to make some pretty crazy choices.
But even with all the slapstick, I feel like there's more to Walter than meets the eye.
You're right. Beneath all the bluster and the malapropisms, there's a bit of vulnerability.
Yeah.
He wants connection, belonging, but he's going about it all wrong.
Makes you wonder, is he really happy chasing these superficial goals? Or is he just trying to fit in?
That's a good question. And it really speaks to a theme that runs through the whole play, the pursuit of happiness. All the characters in their own way are searching for it. But are they looking in the right places?
Good point. Now, I can't forget Constance's nurse, Mistress Trainwell. She's been pretty involved in all this matchmaking.
Oh, Mistress Trainwell. She's that classic, meddling but well-meaning character you see in comedies. She's determined to get Constance and Sir Philip back together, convinced that's what's best for everyone.
I think it's interesting how these supporting characters can really drive the plot.
Absolutely. Their actions, even when they're misguided, they lead to these revelations that force the other characters to face their true feelings.
It seems like the theme of mistaken identity is a big part of this, too.
It is. And it's not just about mistaken identities between characters. It's also about the characters being mistaken about themselves. You know, about what they really want.
It's like Brome is holding up a mirror to the audience, asking us to think about how often we judge based on appearances, or let society tell us what to do.
Exactly. He's subtly challenging us to look deeper, to question what we believe, and really consider what truly matters.
So with all these relationships and mistaken identities, how does Brome keep the audience engaged?
That's where his language comes in. He mixes witty dialogue with these moments of real emotion, creating something that's both funny and makes you think.
It's really amazing how a play this old can still feel so relevant today.
It's because Brome tapped into something timeless, the human condition. We still struggle with the same questions of love, identity, happiness.
One theme that stands out to me is the tension between individual happiness and, what society expects.
Right, and you really see that in Constance's story. She's torn between this obligation and her own heart's desire.
She's in a world that tries to control her future, but she's not giving up without a fight.
Exactly. She's resilient, resourceful, she's shaping her own destiny, not just accepting what's given to her.
And that brings us back to the question, what really makes us happy?
Well, Brome seems to suggest that true happiness, it's not about money or status or what society tells you. It's about real connection, living a life that's true to yourself.
That's something we all struggle with, even today.
Absolutely. And Brome reminds us that the path to happiness, it's not always easy. It's full of obstacles, detours, unexpected turns.
Speaking of unexpected turns, what about Walter? Does he ever find the love and connection he's looking for?
This is where Brome's comedy really shines. Walter stumbles into a situation that's so absurd, so outlandish you can't help but laugh. It involves mistaken identity, a pretend childbirth, and a marriage based on a complete misunderstanding.
Wait, what? A pretend childbirth? You have to tell me more.
I don't want to spoil the surprise, but let's just say it involves a doll, a lot of commotion, and Walter being totally convinced that he is a father.
That sounds like classic Brome.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to push the limits of comedy.
And you know what's fascinating? He uses this over-the-top scene to make a point about the power dynamics between men and women. Even in this ridiculous scenario, Walter has all the power, while the woman involved has very little say.
It's a good reminder that even in comedy, Brome is addressing serious issues, like social inequality and the misuse of power.
Exactly. He's always challenging us to look beyond the surface and question the way things are.
So we've got love triangles, mistaken identities, social commentary, and now a pretend childbirth. What else does Brome have in store for us?
Well, as we move into the final act of The Northern Lass, remember that all these threads, they're about to come together. The truth will be revealed, there will be consequences, and the characters will have to make choices that will determine their futures.
Sounds intense.
It is. And in the midst of all the chaos and humor, Brome will leave us with some really profound questions about love, morality, and what it means to truly be happy.
I can't wait to see how it all plays out. But before we get there, there's one character we need to talk about, Mistress Fitchow's new servant, Hold Up.
Hold up. She's an interesting one. She's intelligent, ambitious, and not like any other servant we've seen so far.
She definitely stands out. What makes her so different?
Well, notice how quickly she figures out the household dynamics, and she starts using her wit and charm to her advantage. She's not just content with serving, she wants to climb the social ladder, just like Sir Philip, but she's doing it her way.
She's almost like a female version of Sir Philip, but maybe even more cunning.
I like that. And her presence adds another layer to the play's exploration of social mobility. You know, Brome shows that ambition isn't just a male thing. Women also want power and recognition, but they often have to be more resourceful to get it.
It makes you wonder, what does Hold Up really want? Is it just about money? Or is it something more?
That's a question we'll explore more in the final act. But I think her character really challenges us to think about ambition, its pros and cons.
So we have Sir Philip struggling with guilt, Mistress Fitchow making moves, Walter caught up in this crazy situation, and now, Hold Up, this ambitious servant, joins the mix. Seems like everyone has something to gain and something to lose.
Exactly. That's what makes Brome's play so great. He creates this web of characters and motivations, keeping the audience guessing until the very end.
I'm hooked. What surprises are waiting for us in the final act of The Northern Lass? What happens to Constance? Does Sir Philip redeem himself? And what about Walter and Hold Up?
Well, you'll have to tune in to the next part of our deep dive to find out. But trust me, Brome does not disappoint. The final act is full of twists and turns and big reveals. It'll leave you entertained and make you think.
Okay, so we're back and ready for that final act of The Northern Lass. I need to know what happens to all these characters, especially Constance.
Well, get ready, because Act 5 is where the comedy really takes off. You'll see disguises and mistaken identities. It's pure chaos, but in a really clever way.
Yes, got it.
Brome uses all of this to make some really sharp points about how hypocritical and just plain absurd the social order is.
Speaking of, Sir Paul Squelch has been on his revenge trip for a while. What happens there?
Let's just say he gets what's coming to him. Remember how obsessed he was with order and justice? Well, he becomes the victim of this prank, and it totally flips the script on his authority.
Okay, what kind of prank?
He ends up being tricked into pretending he's a Spanish suspect, completely oblivious that he's the one being judged. Brome is so smart. He uses this to really highlight how flawed even those in power can be.
Wow, that's, I love that the upholder of justice gets a taste of his own medicine. What about the other characters? Are they involved in this chaos too?
Oh, for sure. Walter Widgeon, still convinced he's a dad, ends up in this hilarious mock childbirth scene. It's all thanks to Hold Up, that crafty servant. It's physical comedy at its best, and another example of how Brome really pushes the boundaries of what's considered proper.
Wait, a mock childbirth?
Yeah.
On stage?
Oh, it's pure absurdity. And in all the craziness and laughter, the truth starts to surface. Disguises come off, people's real identities are revealed, and all those tangled storylines we've been talking about, they start to unravel.
Does everyone get what they deserve? Does Sir Philip face the music for his broken promise to Constance?
He does. It all comes out in the open, threatening his reputation. But amidst the chaos and the revelations, Brome manages to work in some hope and redemption too. Sir Philip, weighed down by guilt, tries to fix his past mistakes. Mistress Fitchow, realizing that revenge won't make her happy, chooses to forgive.
Sounds like they're finally learning some important lessons. What about Walter? Does his story have a happy ending?
You might be surprised. Despite all his blunders, he actually finds genuine joy in his unexpected marriage. And Constance, through it all, shows incredible strength. She's the true hero of this story, refusing to be a victim and really shaping her own destiny.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. But earlier you mentioned an ambiguous ending. What did you mean?
While many of the characters find some version of happiness, Brome doesn't specifically tell us if Constance is truly happy with her final decision. It's almost as if he wants us to really think about what true fulfillment means, especially for women in a society that didn't always give them many choices.
It's a powerful message.
It is. And remember, the ending unfolds during this big celebratory feast symbolizing harmony restored. But with that lingering question about Constance, Brome is reminding us that even in the midst of celebration, there can be individual experiences that don't fit neatly into a simple happy ending.
What a fascinating way to end such a crazy and funny play. So, having delved into the Northern Lass, what do we take away from all this?
Well, you've gotten this taste of 17th century London, seen how social ambition worked back then, and heard this unique way of speaking through Constance's dialect. But Brome's play goes beyond its time period. He's talking about human nature, the pursuit of happiness, and those challenges we face trying to meet society's expectations.
We've seen how love and marriage were often shaped by power and money, something that might still resonate with people today.
Definitely. And Brome's use of comedy and satire and lets us laugh at the ridiculousness of it all while making us think about those deeper social issues that really haven't changed much.
It's been a wild ride back in time with the Northern Lass. Any parting thoughts for our listeners as we say goodbye to 1632 London?
If this deep dive piqued your interest, I definitely recommend reading the whole play. Brome's writing is so witty, the characters will stay with you long after you finish reading, and it might just make you see love, marriage, and ambition in a whole new light. Until next time, happy reading.
See you next time.